Shalom. We're in the Torah portion Balak, which is the Moabite king who asked the oracle Balaam for some help to destroy Israel. Now the Moabites were terrified at Israel. Now the word terrified also means disgusted, and it also means fear. So they sort of, were not agreeing with Israel, but they were afraid of Israel because of their, abilities. And basically the concept of being protected and being powerful. Those are two major things from a military perspective. If you have the protection, that's one thing, but if you have the force and the fighting power, that's another thing that make you very, very powerful. Now, a good example of this is the Iron Dome in Israel. I've looked at a few videos this morning on how that works, and it's fantastic to see that the enemy will send its firepower against Israel, and that's the video that attacked the Israeli airport. But the Iron Dome just took care of them and destroyed them in mid-air. So in the same way, Yahweh's got a force field of protection that is over his people. It's like a dome, an invisible dome that protects you from the attacks of the enemy. Now the language the scripture use in what is being used against us is arrows. Now arrow is something you shoot from behind a place of shelter, so you can't really see where the arrow is coming from, and if there's numerous enemies firing at you, it just look like an array of arrows. I don't know if you've seen some of these movies, I think Braveheart, maybe some of them. They've just got this a curtain of arrows like locusts raining on the troops, and then they just sit under their shields, and all the arrows just dart into the shields, but the soldiers are protected because they are united, and then they create this big shield over them all, and they all find shelter underneath that. So that's the picture of Psalm 91, where Yahweh said, you will sit under the shadow of the Almighty, under his wings of protection. Now the word wing, or the edge of the wing, is the word that relates to the tzitzit. Now the tzitzit that is the smallest commandment, where you wear the symbol of the commandments on the four corners of your garment. Now four corners basically give you the idea of a flat dimensional area, so that symbolizes your life, that on the corners of, say, the block of land where you live, if you put something on each corner, it connects the four corners into four lines that form the boundaries of protection. And then there's the invisible dome that connects all of them. So if you wear the tzitzit, it's similar to having that Iron Dome shield all over your life, over your body, over your household. And the enemy can shoot their arrows however they like. It will just bounce off and not have an effect on you and your family. And what keeps this shield intact is the four corners, the tzitzit, the commandments. And the tzitzis, when they tie the knots, they tie it in an amount of turns they do around in between each knot. They add up to 613. They represent 613, which are the basic number for 613 commandments. Now I've made tzitzis where I spell out the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh through the knots and the number of turns, and that's also beautiful if you can make that with Yahweh's name on each corner of your garment. That's symbolic. Why is that symbolic? It's something in the physical that you see with your eyes, and I think 2 or 3 Torah portions back, it was actually in one of the Torah portions where Yahweh said that you will look upon them and see, so that you will not follow your emotions, which is fear, or your sight, what you will see. When you see the enemy approaching, you will not fear. So the emotion is basically what drives action. Now, when you have a good emotion like love and peace and excitement, and you're zealous for something, that's a good emotion. But the opposite of that is fear. So when you see this enemy in relation to the 10 spies, when they saw the giants, fear filled their hearts, and then they spoke an evil report. So the first thing that will come out as a sign of your emotion is your words. And we all know that words have power. And what you say, life and death is in the mouth of the tongue, and who want to use it will eat the fruit of it. So that's in Proverbs. So we need to be careful what we say. And whenever you catch yourself saying things, you can get an idea of what your emotional state is like. Whether you're in a state of excitement, you're zealous for something, or you're happy, or whether you are sad, depressed, or whether you are defeated, and whether you are in a state of fear. So we need to be mindful of our words, to guard our hearts, and to change our minds, because what you think will spark the emotion, and then the emotion will spark the words. When you speak the words, you will hear the words that will spark the thought again. So it's a downward cycle that feeds on itself, where you create this dark cloud inside of you, and that breaks the shield of Yahweh's protection over you. And not only that, if you step outside of Yahweh's commandments, the safe boundaries of his hedge that's around his sheep, that basically then open up, and then the enemy can break into the camp and steal, kill, and destroy. So we have the mechanism and the trigger, the key for the dome to work or the dome not to work, for the dome to be effective or the dome not to be effective. And we need to be aware and mindful of that every single moment of every day, in order to have the protection of Yahweh protecting us against the onslaught of the enemy. And believe you me, the enemy is more fierce than before. He's more aggressive, because his time is short. So he will come against us with all his force and all his might. But fear not, because Yahweh's got the iron dome protecting us, his Torah, and us following his commandments, walking in his ways as prescribed by Psalm 91. So I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll leave you with these thoughts, and I'll speak to you soon.